All right, boys and girls, we're going to talk about another part of factoring, which is really and truly there's not a lot of new here that I'm going to be showing you. There's a couple of vocabulary words that are going to be very important that you understand and that you learn because these will be used pretty much all the way through fractions, and anytime we're dealing with fractions later in the year, really something that we're going to be doing later could really come back and relate to this. You may not always hear your teacher say it, but it's true. They're related, and so it's one of those things that you could really take advantage of now and think of, well, this is pretty easy, because I think it is for most of you. But it's kind of like laying a foundation. You want this foundation to be strong, and you want this easy part to make sense to you, because it's going to get harder later. And when we get to fractions, if that foundation is stronger, then you're going to be better off. So let's talk about this part today. So this part is going to be factoring, but it's going to be finding what are called common factors and finding what's called the GCF, which is known as the greatest common factor. So that could ring a bell. I know there's a little bit of fourth grade math involved here. And so we might look at that and we might talk about that briefly. But let's talk about how it's going to look in a fifth grade classroom. So right off the bat, let's go back to factoring. So what's going to happen here is sometimes you might have multiple numbers that you have to factor. So in this case, I have 12 and I have 16. So I'm going to go through the steps of factoring. And really and truly, when you do this in class, you get so good at it. I mean, it goes pretty quick, especially if the numbers are low. Like these two numbers are pretty low, and so this shouldn't be real hard math. So I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to start with 1 times 12. That's your starting position, is always using your 1. And then go through some of your math facts that you ought to know. 2 times 6 definitely goes in. Let's go to 3. 3 times 4 definitely goes in. But if you've paid attention and you've listened to your teachers and you've watched some of these videos, then you know that you're done here. And the reason that you're done is really there's a couple of reasons. One is that horseshoe method, what we talked about before, which is when you're factoring, when that next factor is on the right side, you know that you're done testing it. So you're done factoring it. So in other words, 1 went in, 2 went in, 3 went in, 4 would also go in, but it's on the right side. So I'm finished factoring 12. So I'm going to come over to 16, and I'm going to start it, so which is 1 times 16. That's pretty simple. I know 2 is going to go in because it's an even number, so that's going to be 2 times 8. Good. All right. Then I start thinking about some other facts here, like my 3s. Well, my 3s aren't going to go in. My next one will be 4, and so 4 is going to go in. And so this one's kind of unique. This will happen occasionally, which this particular time, 4 times 4 gives you 16. So here's another trick that you can learn. It goes back to the horseshoe method when you're going across from one side to the other. When you're factoring, if the same digit shows up on the right side across from it, then you know officially you're done. So like here, 4 times 4, 4 is on the left side, but it's also on the right side. So I can, underline them here. Since they're on both sides, I know I'm done factoring. So sometimes you're going to have that, you maybe have to do it with like 25. You'd have 5 times 5 sitting there. Maybe if it was like 36, you'd have 6 times 6 sitting there. So you're going to see some of those that you would go, oh, okay, well, hey, I know I'm done because the same digit is on the other side. And true, when you think about this, the truth is when you are factoring, you're still going to be thinking about math facts. And 16 so low, I would hope most kids would go, well, there's just no other facts that give me 16. And so I'm done factoring both. So let's talk about something here. Really 2 different things that you need to know. One are called common factors, and one's called greatest common factor. And they really go hand in hand with one another. So let's talk about the first one. This first one's called common factors. So normally when I'm teaching this to my students, I just tell mine, hey, let's go find them and let's circle the common factors. Well, common means, they're the same, they share it. And so I'm going to circle 1. They both have 1. They both have 2. They both have 4. But then let's kind of step back and let's think here. So I think a misconception could be, well, what about the 6? Well, on 12, 6 is a factor. But on 16, I don't see 6. I see 16, but not 6. And so 6 is not a common factor. So I can kind of stop and look here, really and truly, I don't think I have any more. So up at the top, I'm going to put CF for common factors, and I'm going to list them. I see 1 is a common factor, 2 is a common factor, and so is 4. The other ones, they don't show up on both lists. And so when I see that, I just want to kind of stop and think, okay, well, if I'm looking for the common factors, I think it's just 1, 2, and 4. Now, the next one is what's known as the GCF, which you're going to think of it as, it's kind of in its name. It is the greatest common factor. Well, between 1, 2, and 4, what's the greatest number? What's the biggest number? Well, in that case, it is 4. So the greatest common factor between 12 and 16 is going to be 4. And so if you were to relate this to fractions, this is a huge part of fractions later on, where when we're going to be dealing with fractions and trying to think about all the different things that we do with fractions, one of the things that, you're going to get so probably sick of your teacher saying this, but it's such a great skill to learn at your age, and that is what's called simplifying. And when we simplify fractions, you really have to know what's called the GCF, or the greatest common factor. So even though this doesn't look like fractions right now, believe me, this is fractions. This is the intro, or excuse me, what I said earlier, it's the foundation to fractions. Okay, let's look at this problem here. This is going to be the same thing. I just want to take another example here and show you what it could look like. So I'm going to write the two kind of definitions up top. I've got common factors and I've got greatest common factors. So what I want to look for here is same math. I want to go and factor both, and I want to find both the common factors and the greatest common factor. So I'm going to start with 14. So right off the bat, the easy, 1 times 14. That's pretty easy. The second one I would go to is a math fact, which is 2 times 7. Now, at this point, I know my facts, and you should too. I know my facts so well that I know that there's not another math fact that gives me 14. And so between 14, or when I'm looking at 14, I'm just going to kind of go, hey, I can stop. I could try 3, I could try 4, I could try 5 and 6. I just don't think those are going to work. And so I know me as a teacher, I want my students to know facts that well that they just have that confidence to go, hey, I'm done. I'm finished. Okay, let's go to 20. I'm going to start with the obvious, 1 times 20. And then I'm going to go to 2 times 10. That's a math fact. I know 3 is not going to work, but I know 4 would work, and that's another math fact. And there's that horseshoe method again. If I go to the other side, my next one to test would be 5. 5's on the right side, so I'm finished. And so I'm going to pause here and I'm going to think, okay, let's go back to what common factors are. They are numbers that show up on both of your lists. So 1, I'll give you a hint, 1's always going to be a common factor because 1 goes into everything. So 1 is your common factor, of course. And then the next one that I would spot would be 2. Now, when you look at common factors and you look for common factors, think about it like this. They have to be on both lists. So if you have a number that doesn't have as many factors, like 14. 14 doesn't have a lot of factors. It only has 4. Then if I look at those and I'm going, okay, well, hey, I know 14's done on the other side. I know 7's done on the other side. You're actually done because you've kind of tested all of them. And so, really and truly, if I wanted to answer this, 14 and 20, the common factors would be 1 and 2. The greatest common factor, the bigger out of the two there would be 2. So your greatest common factor between 14 and 20 is 2. And so, again, I mentioned this on another video. If this gets harder, the only really reason it gets harder or could get harder for you is probably just bigger numbers. So if you get some bigger numbers here, maybe you just have to do more thinking. Maybe you have to do more work. But the math is not going to change. You're going to do the same math. You just have to maybe work a little bit harder at it. So really think about those two. Common factors, greatest common factors. Gosh, if you know those facts, this is easy, easy stuff.